I want to ask you something. What's the difference between doing something because you have to and doing something because it holds you? I don't want you to answer that right away, but notice what comes up. Where in your life do things feel heavy, effortful, or even resistant? And where do they feel grounding, familiar, and even supportive? Now notice something else. How much are you consciously aware of what supports your well-being, your stability, your care? And how much of that awareness feels embodied, lived, accessible in your day-to-day life? Listen, there is no judgment here. Because when I first started thinking about what supports me, I didn't even know the answers. Not at first. And this isn't about doing it right. It's about meeting yourself honestly, exactly where you are. Because knowing something consciously and feeling safe enough to live it are two very different experiences. And this is where today's reflection begins. Most of us are taught to build routines, to be disciplined, consistent, productive. But for many people, especially those who didn't grow up with structure, routine doesn't feel supportive. It feels like pressure and a lot of expectations. And it's just another place where we could fall short. So instead of routines, I want to talk about rituals. What I've come to understand about rituals is that it's not about force. Rituals are about relationships with your body, with your mind, with your emotions, your nervous system. So what is a ritual? A ritual is a repeated action done in a specific mental, emotional, and energetic state. And that state is usually rooted in presence, intention, and care. To me, I just think that's love. When we turn routines into rituals, we stop asking, how do I make myself do this? And start asking, how do I make this feel safe for my nervous system? Let's think about those people that wake up at 4 a.m., that eat healthy, maybe read, go jogging, exercising. And while yes, it is absolutely quiet in the morning and most people are asleep, so it's easier to get things done because there's no distractions. However, it's also about the intention of the task that they're doing and the focus that they're bringing to that task. And honestly, the things that they do in the morning, they don't feel like a nuance. This is something that feels like self-care, feels like love, not just productivity, but willpower. I want to talk about why small tasks feel so big. For a lot of people, whether you're an adult or a child or a teenager, young adult, things like organizing a home, cleaning dishes, cooking a healthy meal, making the bed, stretching, brushing your teeth feel strangely overwhelming. And it's not because the task is difficult, but because they were never encoded as safe or neutral. If discipline wasn't modeled consistently in childhood, those foundational behaviors never become conscious. They didn't move into the background of life. Instead, they stayed in the foreground, requiring decision-making, emotional regulation, and effort every single time. There was a point in time where I never made my bed. It's like, why would I? I just gonna come back home and mess it up all over again. But then there's something soothing about making your bed in the morning, and then when you return home, you have a peaceful place to rest. But it took time to even build that habit of, as soon as I wake up, going to do a whole bunch of million different things because I felt like I had to. So I was never focused on the place that I rested at. And so as soon as I wake up, whether I use the bathroom or go brush my teeth, and I forget about my bed, when I come back to my bed, that space that I lay my head in, it looks chaotic. And I want to start my day with one less thing that's on my mind. That in a way helps clear my mind. And that kind of goes into my next point. When life already feels heavy, even simple tasks can feel triggering. This isn't laziness. It's not a lack of willpower. It's the nervous system that never learned, this is safe, I know how to be here. And while I did use my bed, for instance, as an example, I also think about when I was in college and doing papers was extremely stressful. And I cried every single time. Every time I have to do a paper, I cried. But I have a learning disability. And in middle school, I remember in 8th grade, I had a teacher who was never supportive. I would be called out, and instead of asking why I didn't do the homework or if I needed help and stuff like that, it was just, oh, you're focused on this instead of doing my homework. Maybe I'm struggling. And so my relationship with doing anything with English, grammar, it's very triggering. And that's where I've been learning how to build a relationship with my nervous system in that specific area. But let's move on. So, emotional stability, it's not about control. It's not about control at all, but it's about attunement, and it's also about regulation without forcing it. You have to teach it. You have to teach what safety feels like. Now, every small task carries an unspoken question. Will this overwhelm me? Will I be judged? And will I fail if I don't do it perfectly? Rituals answer those questions before the task even begins. What I want you to do is lower the bar until your nervous system says yes. And if there's resistance, the task is too big for right now. Instead of clean the kitchen, wash 5 dishes. Instead of getting organized, clear one surface. Completion builds safety, and safety builds trust. Sometimes we have this big mess and we don't know where to start. But if we do it section by section, little by little, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, maybe even just 5 minutes, that is better than nothing. And also, again, we're talking about the nervous system. You're able to complete that task without getting distracted, without overwhelming yourself, because you're giving yourself time to breathe and pause while doing these tasks. This is overwhelming because that's what your body learned versus, oh, this isn't so bad. I can do more. But there's something that I want you to do to anchor every task to a regulating state. I talked about throughout the task, just give yourself a break, pause, breathe. But you should also do that before the task begins. Soften your shoulders, relax your jaw, take one breath. Say internally or out loud, I'm not rushing. I'm not being judged. I'm here. There's no deadline. It's just you showing up for yourself. The state you practice matters more than the task itself. I'm going to repeat that. because I feel like it needs to sink in. The state you practice matters more than the task itself, because the task can change throughout the day, every other day, monthly. But the state that you are when you're doing anything is how you're able to move through each task, even tasks that are challenging. Might not be as stressful or overwhelming because your body has already practiced it so many times in small increments. It's okay to do less more often. Consistency isn't intensity, it's predictability. 5 minutes a day is more regulating than 1 hour once a week. Your nervous system trusts what it can expect. One thing I have learned to do is I attach care to ordinary actions. Going back to making my bed, I'm preparing a place for rest. Or think about when you brush your teeth, you're caring for your future self. Instead of having to go to the dentist and get root canals or fillings, if you take care of your teeth, then it's preventing having to pay for money to fix your teeth. And that becomes something stressful later on. Versus learning to do tasks with care. There are people who have houses, and if they don't know how to take care of a house, then it doesn't last very long. And then there's people who've lived in their house for 50 years, 60 years because they take care of their sanctuary, their space. It's no difference from externally where you live or physically, but also your body internally, your mind, your soul, your body. I said that backwards, but it's okay. When you cook, this is nourishment and not a chore. And I know that when it comes to food, which is a completely separate topic, relationship with food is very tricky. But specifically think about what food is supposed to do for you, or what cooking is supposed to do for you. You're nourishing your body. Again, going back to taking care of you. After all, this body is borrowed, but when you take care of it, less doctors. If you don't like doctors, I suggest you take care of your body. But this gives meaning to your experience. And this meaning helps rewire each experience. It's like your entire life you was going clockwise, and then you're like, this is not working. I'm doing the same things over and over and over, expecting a different outcome. Let me try something different. And just because it doesn't work at first, or it isn't automatic, you have to keep on doing it. Over time, yeah, you might be going clockwise, but you've literally rewired how you used to be. Because that version of who you were doesn't fit into the version of who you wish to be and who you presently are, especially if you're listening to this. And that's the point. You need to meet yourself where you are. Many of us ask the universe for more responsibility, more abundance, more opportunity. But if whatever you have feels unmanageable, more won't feel like expansion. It would just feel like pressure. Receiving requires capacity, and capacity is built through the small things. Again, receiving requires capacity, and capacity is built through the small things. To me, when I met myself where I was at, I wasn't settling. I was preparing. I was being realistic in what I can hold and what I can't. There's one last thing that feels very important to say, and I've said it a little bit throughout this talk, but take your time. Please, I'm begging you, take your time. And I mean that literally. If any task or something that you're goaling yourself to do, if it takes 1 month, 6 months, or even a year to stabilize the small foundational things, it is not slow. I promise you, it's not slow. Relative to a lifetime, it's extremely brief. Currently, I have 29 years of life. And right now, I'm working on the consistency with my YouTube channel, with Silently Sensed. And I have to work at it slow. And I am making shorter talks until I'm able to sit and hold the longer talks, the 30-minute talks, the 45-minute talks, that hour-and-a-half talks. But I'm okay with that because I'm teaching myself how to be still, how to allow the words flow through me, and also I can sit and talk for long, but I think I always lose substance in what I'm saying. And for me, what I've understood is the nervous system does not heal on deadlines. It heals through repetition, safety, and trust. When you take your time with any task, you're not delaying your life. You're expanding your ability to hold it. Let's think about the foundation. If you already know how to do all these things, you're in a place that most people wish they were. Longevity is not built through intensity. It is built through pacing. The steadier you move now, the more you'll be able to carry later. Emotionally, relationally, creatively, and definitely spiritually. And there's something that's very subtle that begins to happen. You don't need motivation, you don't need reminders, and you definitely don't even need talks like this. Because guess what? Your life becomes the proof. Your presence begins to demonstrate what regulation looks like, how care can exist inside the ordinary, how stability is something you live and not something you explain. And this is where devotion quietly enters, not as pressure or perfection, as a steady, loving return. Honestly, what you're really practicing is not discipline, it's actually devotion. You're now devoting your energy, your time, your love, your care to your nervous system, to your emotional world, to the life you are already living. So that when more arrives, watch, you can receive it with grace. Let the routine become a ritual. Let the ritual become regulation. And let regulation become trust. Again, you don't need to rush. You don't need to force. You don't need to become someone else. Return to your body, your breath, to the smallest act of care. And when you give yourself that moment to just pause, reset, sometimes that's just enough.